My name is Chloe, and by my 34th birthday, I had spent 5 years believing my sister, Jenna, was my angel. For 5 years, my sister, Jenna, was my angel. She cooked for me, cared for me, and held my hand through a mysterious illness that stole my life piece by piece. I thought her love was unconditional. It wasn't until I saw the footage from the kitchen camera that I realized her love was the poison, literally. Before the fog rolled in, Jenna and I were the kind of sisters you see in movies. I was the dreamer, she was the rock. She was 5 years older, and had always been the one to patch my scraped knees, give me brutally honest but necessary advice about bad boyfriends, and celebrate my small victories as if they were her own. I remember calling her from my college dorm, crying over a failed exam, and she drove 3 hours just to bring me pizza and watch terrible reality TV until I fell asleep. That was Jenna, my protector, my best friend, my other half. We shared a history written in whispered secrets and late-night laughter. I trusted her with my life. In the end, that was almost a fatal mistake. The illness didn't arrive with a crash. It seeped in like a tide. At first, it was just a fatigue that coffee couldn't touch. I was a graphic designer, and I started missing deadlines because I couldn't focus on the screen. The pixels would swim and my thoughts would just dissolve. Then came the persistent, dull headaches and a low-grade nausea that made even my favorite foods taste like ash. I went to doctor after doctor. Specialists in neurology, gastroenterology, immunology. They ran every test imaginable, drawing what felt like gallons of blood. The results were always the same. Everything looks normal. They'd pat me on the shoulder, suggest it was stress or depression, and send me home with another useless prescription. Each normal test result felt like a new layer of invalidation, making me feel like I was going crazy. The desperation was a physical weight in my chest. I was fading, and no one could tell me why. That's when Jenna stepped in, my knight in shining armor. It started with meals delivered in neat glass containers, labeled with the day of the week. Then, as I grew weaker and had to go on long-term disability, she suggested she move into my spare bedroom. "Just for a little while," she said, her voice laced with concern. "Just until you're back on your feet. You shouldn't be alone." It felt like a lifeline. She took over everything, managing my appointments, talking to the doctors, handling my bills. She was so efficient, so loving. My friends and family called her a saint, and I believed them. I was drowning, and she was the only one holding my head above water. Every morning, without fail, the first thing I would hear was Jenna in the kitchen, humming as she ground fresh coffee beans. She had developed this special wellness coffee for me. "It's a special blend," she'd say, placing the steaming mug in my hands. It was my favorite mug, the one with the little blue birds on it. Organic, low-acid beans with adaptogens and some vitamins to help with the fog. The ritual was comforting. It was a tangible piece of her care, a warm, fragrant promise that she was trying to make me better. I would thank her, my voice weak, and she would just smile and pat my hand, telling me to rest. That coffee became the cornerstone of my day and the symbol of her devotion. Slowly, without me even noticing at first, my world shrank. When a friend would call, Jenna would answer my phone. "She's having a bad day," she'd whisper, her voice full of feigned sympathy. "She needs her rest." If someone wanted to visit, she'd tell them I wasn't up for it, that the stimulation might cause a relapse. She convinced me that my own home, the place that was once my sanctuary, was now a fragile bubble that couldn't be disturbed. My friends stopped calling. The texts became fewer and farther between. My world, once vibrant and full of people, had been reduced to the 4 walls of my house and the suffocating presence of my sister's care. I existed in a haze, both physically and emotionally. The days blurred into a monotonous cycle of waking up tired, drinking Jenna's coffee, and retreating to my bed. I was weak, confused, and profoundly lonely. A deep, heavy gratitude for my sister was tangled up with a feeling I couldn't name, a quiet, persistent whisper that I was a prisoner in my own life. I felt completely broken, like a porcelain doll that had been shattered and poorly glued back together. I had given up on doctors, on friends, on myself. I had placed my entire existence into Jenna's capable, loving hands. The fog wasn't just a symptom anymore, it was my reality. And I saw no way out. If you've ever felt like someone was taking advantage of your trust, let me know in the comments. You're not alone. The thing that changed everything wasn't a flash of insight or a sudden burst of strength. It was a cheap security camera I bought on a whim during a Black Friday sale online. I told Jenna it was to watch for package thieves, a little white lie to explain the sudden purchase. For a week, it sat on the front windowsill, recording the quiet suburban street. Then one afternoon, consumed by a level of boredom only possible when you're confined to your house, I had a thought. I wonder what my cat, Milo, did all day. On shaky legs, I moved the camera from the front window to the bookshelf in the living room, positioning it to face the kitchen counter. It was a small, meaningless action, a way to pass an hour. It ended up saving my life. A few nights later, I was awake at 3 a.m. as I often was. The pain in my joints was a dull, throbbing ache, and my mind was racing. I picked up my phone, my thumb scrolling aimlessly. Then I remembered the camera. I opened the app, a flicker of curiosity breaking through my exhaustion. I scrubbed back through the day's footage, watching Milo bat at a dust bunny and then nap in a patch of sun. Then I went back to the morning. I watched the timestamped footage as Jenna came into the kitchen. The routine was achingly familiar. She pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, my bluebird mug and her plain white one. She scooped the coffee, brewed it, and poured. And then I saw it. It was so fast I almost missed it. She glanced toward my bedroom door, then her hand dipped into the pocket of her robe. She pulled out a tiny, unlabeled vial. With a quick, practiced motion, she unscrewed the cap and tapped a small amount of a fine, white powder into my mug. Only my mug. She stirred it in, her face a mask of casual neutrality, and slipped the vial back into her pocket. My world didn't just tilt. It shattered. The air left my lungs in a silent gasp. The phone almost slipped from my trembling hands. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a vitamin. It was deliberate. It was poison. In that silent, horrifying moment, I realized my angel was a monster. My first instinct was to scream, to run into her room and demand to know why. But a cold, primal fear seized me. I was weak. She was strong. She had been doing this for years. A confrontation would be useless, dangerous even. My survival depended on one thing. I had to act. The next morning was the most terrifying performance of my life. I heard her footsteps, the familiar sound of the coffee grinder, and my heart hammered against my ribs. She walked in with that same gentle smile. "Morning, sleepyhead. I made your coffee." She handed me the bluebird mug. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I smiled back, a brittle, fragile thing. "Thank you, Jenna. You're the best." As she turned to wash the pot, I stood up, pretending to stretch, and walked to the sink. In one swift, silent motion, I poured the toxic brew down the drain and quickly refilled the mug with a splash of water from the tap, just enough to make it look full. The rest of the day, I was the perfect patient. I lay on the couch, moaned about my headache, and let her dote on me, all while a silent scream was echoing in my skull. I wasn't just sick anymore. I was a spy in enemy territory. While playing the part of the invalid, I became a detective. My brain, which had been foggy for years, suddenly felt sharp, fueled by adrenaline and terror. Late at night, when Jenna was asleep, I'd take a small vial and collect a sample of the dregs from my mug, which I'd started leaving on the counter for her to wash. During the day, I'd use her grocery runs as my window of opportunity. I got onto our shared family laptop. It took me 3 tries to guess her password. It was our childhood dog's name. The irony was a bitter pill. And there it was. Bank statements. She had been methodically transferring small, seemingly insignificant amounts from my disability payments into her own secret account for years. It was a slow, steady bleed. But the real twist, the one that made me physically ill, was a scanned document buried deep in a folder labeled household. It was a forged life insurance policy. She had made herself the sole beneficiary. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. She wasn't trying to kill me quickly. She was farming me, keeping me just sick enough to be dependent and isolated, draining my finances, and waiting for the day I'd finally succumb, leaving her with a significant payout. I knew I needed undeniable, third-party proof. Using a prepaid credit card I'd ordered online, I paid for a full toxicology screening from a private lab. The next time Jenna went out, I drove to a shipping center 2 towns over and mailed the coffee sample I had saved. The wait was excruciating. Every smile, every "how are you feeling?" from her felt like a threat. Then the email came. I opened the attached PDF, my hand shaking. The report was filled with clinical terms, but a few words stood out. A specific, slow-acting toxin known to cause severe neurological and gastrointestinal issues, difficult to detect in standard blood work. It was confirmation. I wasn't crazy. I was being poisoned. That night, I methodically downloaded every piece of evidence. 5 years of damning video clips, the forged insurance document, and a complete history of her fraudulent bank transfers onto a single, encrypted thumb drive. The revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was cold, silent, and final. The next morning, I went through the coffee ritual one last time. While Jenna was in the shower, I packed a small bag with my laptop, the thumb drive, my real passport, and the clothes I was wearing. I walked out the front door without looking back, got into my car that hadn't been driven in months, and drove directly to the police station. I sat down with a detective, a woman with kind, tired eyes, and I calmly laid out the entire 5-year story. I didn't cry. I just presented the facts, playing the video of Jenna poisoning my coffee that very morning on my laptop. I handed her the thumb drive and the lab report. I watched her expression shift from professional skepticism to shock, then to a grim, steely resolve. I didn't stay to watch them arrest her. I just drove to a quiet street overlooking my neighborhood and parked. An hour later, I saw the flashing lights. I watched from a distance as 2 police cars pulled up to my house. I watched as they let a confused, then hysterical, Jenna out in handcuffs. There was no joy, no triumphant fist pump. Just a profound, hollowed-out relief that made me feel like I could finally breathe for the first time in half a decade. The fog began to lift that day, but the road to recovery is long. I'm healing, not just from the poison, but from the deep, intricate wounds of betrayal. I'm learning to trust my own body again, to trust my own mind. And I'm rebuilding my life, this time with ironclad walls where there once were open doors. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's a warning. The monsters you read about aren't always strangers lurking in the dark. Sometimes, they are the ones who tuck you in at night. They are the ones who smile at you over breakfast. If you are in a situation where your gut is screaming that something is wrong, even when the world tells you you're safe, listen to that voice. It is the purest, most powerful survival instinct you have. Do not let anyone silence it. Your life may depend on it. If my story helps even one person recognize the warning signs and find the strength to act, then telling it is worth it. Please, trust yourself. Fight for your truth.